Hey, hi, hello, and welcome to yet another video. And in this one, we're going to be building an AI image generator as an iOS app. Now, I know a lot of you have enjoyed the previous ones where we built the ChatGPT as an iOS app, and in this one, we're building something similar to DALL-E-2. So if you're ready, let's dive straight into it. So I jumped on Dribble and I typed in image generator, and I came across this awesome design by Daria Kravets from PerWeb UI UX agency. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to be building this middle user interface and the image generated one. I'll have another video going into this carousel, but for this, we're just going to be building the image generator. So if we pull this up, that's actually this design. So it looks like we're going to need a stack view that has a bunch of different design styles, a prompt text field, a generate button, and then also once the image is generated, we want the generated image, which looks like this. So let's go ahead and jump into Xcode, and we're going to create a new Xcode project. Make sure it's set to iOS, macOS, or whatever platform you want to build with, but I'm going to be going with iOS. And then we're going to call this image generator app. And now once this is saved, I'm going to pop this over to full screen and get started. Now the first thing we want to do is head over, we're going to get rid of the content in here. So we're going to rename this to prompt view and rename this, and also in the app, our prompt view. Right, so the first thing we want to do is create the image types. So what we have here is like something like abstract, realistic. Now I'm going to go and create a new file and call this image style. And in this file, we're going to create an enum image style, and I'll make it of type string. So that way we can also grab the raw value of that. And now the styles I'm going to use are going to be, so for example, we want surrealism, realism, 3D render. You can play around with these and you can add any styles that you want. Okay, so I've got a bunch of these, and now the other thing that I want to do now is I want to create a title for these so that we can add that title over here on the overlay. We also want this to be case iterable, and then we want to add the title so that we can put it on this overlay here with this piece of text. So title is going to be string, and then I'll use a switch statement. And if I type self and go down, it should autofill all of these. And then I'm just going to return a nice title for this. So just like a capitalized version. Okay, so now we're going to go back, and I realize I forgot to change this prompt view. So inside the prompt view, we actually want we want a VStack, and inside that VStack, we're going to have the title. We're going to have another title here for choose a style of picture, and then an HStack inside of a scroll view, and a text editor, and then a button. We're going to start off with a VStack, and the alignment is going to be leading. And then inside that, we're going to have our text, and this text is going to say generate. So instead of select options, because I'm not going to include the top options, so that text is going to say generate, and it's going to have a font of large title, and I'm going to make it bold, and foreground color is going to be white. Now obviously that means we need to change the background color of this to black, and make sure our edges ignore all safe areas, otherwise we're going to cut that background up the top here. And then we're going to have another title, so I just copy this, and this one is going to say select, what does it say? Choose a style. Choose a style. Now this one is just going to be title 3, and also bold. Foreground color is also that. Now inside this, we're going to have an HStack, and we're going to iterate over each of the cases. Image style dot all cases, and for image style, for each image style, we're going to have let's have a look. Inside all of these, let's just return back now the text, which is image style dot title. So we should have a bunch of those come up. We need to identify this, so ID /self. And we should see them here, but because the background is black, you probably can't. So say foreground color dot white. And now you've got all of the styles. Obviously we actually want an image. So I'll provide you with a bunch of these images, but essentially you can just pop in an image for each of the types. So I've got abstract, geometric, minimalism, realism. And I actually ended up generating these using an image generator. I used DALL-E-2 to generate these images. So I've got image types. Let's change this to image styles. And then let's pop our H-stack inside of a scroll view. And we want to make sure that the axis of the scroll view is horizontal. So it's a horizontal scroll view. So now we can scroll through these. And to get a good sizing, we're going to use a geometry reader. So geometry reader, and we've got reader here. Pop our scroll view inside of that. And now we're going to replace our text with an image. And the image is going to be image style.raw value. And that's resizable. And just so we can see it, let's say background color blue. And you'll be able to see that now you've got all the images scrolling. Now, obviously the images are too big, and that's the reason why we've added our geometry reader. So we want to make sure that the image is also set to a custom aspect ratio. We want scale to fill and the frame to be equal to, let's say, width and height. So the width is going to be our reader dot size dot width times 0.4, and let's also make the height that, and then also make it a little bit longer. So let's say times 1.4. And I forgot the comma here, and it seems like it's pretty much working. Seems like it's working now. The only thing we have is these images are overlapped, so all we want to do is say clipped, boom, and now we've got our row of images. I'm going to add, instead of clipped, I'm just going to say clipped shape, and I'm going to clip it to a rounded rectangle of corner radius 20. And so now we have some cute rounded rectangles here. I want to get rid of the indicators so we don't have that little scroll down the bottom. And the only thing left for this scroll view now is actually to turn each one of these items into a button. So if I add a button, action label, grab our image, pop that in the label section. Now what we want to do is every time we select one of these options, we're going to change the selected style. So I'm going to add a state variable up top, and it's going to be selected style, and it's going to initially start on image style, all cases 0. So we start on the first one, and we're going to say selected style is equal to image style. So then what we're going to do is add an overlay on top of this, and it's going to be a rounded rectangle, and the corner radius is going to be 20, and this rectangle we're going to say stroke, and we want the stroke to be color dot yellow, and the stroke width is going to, and the line width is going to be 3. Now you notice it's cut off a little bit on the end, and that's because we're clipping the shape before the overlay. So if we grab the clip shape, pop that over this, and now you have a clean design. The only thing we want to do is make sure that this outline is only on the selected style. So we're going to say image style is equal to selected style, then our line width is 3, otherwise it's 0. So you'll see it's only the first one, and then if we click, you'll see that the outline ends up transferring to the selected style. So now we're selecting our style, and we want to pop in our text field now. So under this, we're going to say text editor, and it's going to be bound to a variable called prompt text. Prompt text. Let's go up and create that. Up here, we've got state var prompt text of type string, and that's going to be equal to an empty string. Now to make sure that we can see this, we're going to add a padding and then a background of color.gray opacity 0.3 and corner radius of 12. So we round those corners there. And now we can still see this. So what we want to do is we want to say scroll content hidden. So scroll content background is hidden, and that way we can't see that. I want to make this a little darker, maybe even 1. No, that's too much. So 1.5. If I click in here, the writing is black. So let's change our foreground color to white, and also our tint to yellow. And now our indicator, our cursor indicator is yellow, and the text that we write is white. Now, last thing we want to do is pop in the button. So we have a button here, and we're going to say text generate. And obviously this is sitting in the center. We don't want that. So we're going to put that in an H stack. Well, 2 ways you can do this. Actually, you know what? Let's do a V stack. Pop the button in, make the V stack frame max width infinity. And then instead we make the alignment center. And this is going to have a foreground color of black and a background color yellow, and give it some padding. Oh, the padding needs to come before the background color. There we go. And corner radius, let's just say, let's actually clip this, clip shape, capsule, and now we'll get a full rounded corner. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab this text over here, and I'm going to pop it on top of the prompt as well, and I'm going to say enter a prompt, so we know what to add over here. Now the next thing we want to do is create the generator view. Let's create a new one, new file, and I'll make sure it's a SwiftUI view. And now we've got the view already set up for us with the preview. So let's go here and create, again, same thing. We want a V stack, and it's also going to have leading alignment. Inside this, we're going to have text saying generated image, font large title, bold, foreground color is white, and this whole thing is going to have a background of color.black.edges ignoring safe area, and we're going to ignore all of those. We're going to make sure that this frame takes up the whole screen, so we're going to say max width is going to be infinity. So under this we want another V stack. If we have a look at what this image looks like, it looks something like this. So you have time spent, the image, and then something to save your image. So V stack, again, we're going to have our content in here, text, which is going to say time spent, and this is going to carry a variable that it's going to be duration or something. Let's just put an empty string in here, and then an image. Now, because we're going to be pulling the image from a URL, we're going to use async image. Async image, and we want a URL content placeholder. So let's click in here, open these out, URL, and this is the image. Okay, we're going to come back to this. Now the next file we're going to create is our view model. So let's create our view model. This will just be a Swift file, and it's generator view model. The way we're going to build this is extension of generator view. It's going to be an observable object, and inside this we're going to put a bunch of variables that we'll be monitoring inside our view. So the first one is going to be the duration. Now make sure inside an observable object we use publish, not state. So we want duration, and that is going to be equal to 0. So we're going to start off at 0. We're also going to add a published variable, which is the image, and the image is going to be of type optional URL, because it starts off as nil, and then once the image gets populated, we then assign the variable. My bad, I just realized we extended, but we didn't actually create the class. So class generate class view model, and that's actually the observable object. So if you just review that, we extended generator view, and then we created a view model class inside that, which is an observable object, and we pop the variables inside there. The other variable we want is we actually want it to have reference of the prompt, and we want it to also have the image, the selected style, and that's of image type or image style. Alrighty, and now just add initializer. We don't want to initialize these two. We just want to initialize the prompt and the selected style. And we also want a function here that says generate image, and we're going to create a formatted prompt. So let formatted prompt is equal to selected style dot title image of. So this will actually format a prompt that we're going to send to OpenAI's API. So this will say if we chose, for example, the selected style was 3D render, and then we said the prompt was going to be a red car, this will say 3D render image of red car. And this is where we're going to put in the other information. So let's go back to our view real quick to link these up, and then we're going to start connecting to the API using an OpenAI service. So we're going to head back to the view, fill this in, and we need to obviously have reference. So an observed object of our view model, and that's going to be of type view model. Generator view is also going to request that. If we wait 3, 2, 1, there we go. Fill that in, create an instance where the prompt, let's just say red car, and the image style, let's say 3D render. And then our URL is going to be viewModel.url or image. And then our image is actually going to be an image.resizable. We're going to make sure the aspect ratio is set to fit 1 and fit. And then our placeholder is just going to be a progress view. So when the image hasn't loaded yet and we actually have no image, we're just going to have a placeholder view, as you can see right here. So it's spinning and basically we have no image yet. Now what we need to do is actually find a way to get the image. So if we go over here, we're going to add a tiny bit more styling, and that's going to be, so we're going to add a background of color dot gray dot opacity 0.2. And we're going to also make the aspect ratio of this equal to fit the frame. So we want a frame of max width. We don't want the min width. Max width is infinity. We're going to give it a corner radius of 20, and then make sure we clip the image like we did earlier. So clipped. Probably won't see anything now because there's no image. But then what we're going to do is throw in a spacer, and boom, our entire screen is taken up. We do want to add some padding, so we clean it up a little bit. And the final thing we want to do is nothing really. Now this is where we're going to start loading the image from the API, or sending through the request so we can actually generate the image and then receive a URL. So on appear, we're going to say viewModel.generate image. And that's pretty much all we need to do in our view to pretty much get the image moving. And now we need to actually start working on the network request. So before we get started with any of that, we're going to add packages, and we're going to add a Lamifier. So a Lamifier, this is the GitHub URL that you want to copy if you don't already have a Lamifier used in like a previous project. So it's github.com/Lamifier/Lamifier.git. Now I already have imported it in previous projects, so I have it in my Swift packages. So I'm going to add that package and wait for it to load. I say add package, and now I've got a Lamifier. We're going to create a new file that will manage our network requests to the OpenAI API. and we're going to call that OpenAI service. So I'm going to create a class, OpenAI service, and inside this, I'm going to first of all declare a private let endpoint URL, and this is going to be https://api.openai.com/v1/images/generations. Now make sure you get this endpoint correctly. If you don't get this endpoint correctly, you're not going to get any responses back, and you're probably going to be wondering, why is this not working? That's probably one of the reasons. A lot of the time we might get a typo or spell v1 or put the wrong version or put a random endpoint that doesn't really hit anything, and so we get no response back. Making sure you have the right endpoint URL will pretty much always guarantee that you get the right response. Then we're going to create a function called generate image, and in this one we're just going to pass in a prompt, and that prompt is going to be of type string, and this is going to be an async function that throws an error, of course, and it's going to return an OpenAI image response. Now, an OpenAI image response is actually something we have not created yet. So let me make sure I get this correct. Close this, and let's go ahead and make our struct. Copy the name, OpenAI image response. Make sure it is, of course, decodable. Now what I want to do is head over to OpenAI's documentation and show you exactly what this response is meant to look like. So if we go to platform.openai.com, sign in, make sure you signed in. If you haven't signed in, create an account. Make sure you have billing attached to your account. If you don't have billing set up, you won't be able to process any of this either. So once you set up your OpenAI account, jump into here and head over to documentation. So when you go to documentation, on the left-hand side, you'll find image generation. And actually, I want the API reference. Let's go API reference, images, create an image. This is where you find the URL. It's also a post request, and these are the parameters that you can give it. So what I'm going to pass in is prompt and size. So the response is going to look something like this. It's just going to have data and an array of URLs. So it's going to be data OpenAI image URL. And let's create this type as well. Struct OpenAI image URL, also decodable. And this is going to have URL of type string. And the other thing that we want to create is the body. Generate. Okay. Struct OpenAI image, let's say image request body. Just easy to understand. And this is going to be encodable, because that's what we're going to be sending through to the API. And this one is where we're going to pass in a prompt of type string and a size of type string. So in this case, we're going to say let body equal OpenAI image request body. The prompt is going to be the prompt we have here, and the size, we have the options of 256, 512, or 1024. Let's go with 512 by 512. Those are the only options you have at the moment. So if you put anything else, you're probably going to have an issue from the. And then we want to add in our headers, and that's of type HTTP headers, and that is equal to pretty much a dictionary that says authorization. And our value here is going to say bearer, and we're going to pass in our constants dot OpenAI API key. New file, constants, and in here we're going to create an enum constants and say static OpenAI API key is equal to, and this is where you put in your API key. I'm obviously not going to show you what that is, but this is where you save it. Store your API key in here, and let's jump back to the service. We're getting an issue that we can't find HTTP headers in scope, and that's because we haven't imported a Llama file. So let's go ahead and import a Llama file, jump in and return try await af.request, and we want the method, parameters, encoder, and headers. So our URL is going to be endpoint URL, method is post, parameters is body, encoder.json, and headers are our headers. Super simple. We basically laid these all out for us, throw them all in, and we're ready to go. And now to make sure that we end up returning the OpenAI image response, we're going to say serializing decodable. There we go. And for this one, we want to add OpenAI response.self. Perfect. And make sure that we add .value at the end so we can get the async response. I notice I've got an error here, and that's because I used throw, not throws. Make sure you remember the S. So now we're going to come back and complete our generate image function. Before we get started with that, we want to declare a private variable, and that's going to be an instance. Let's have a look. Private let OpenAI service equal OpenAI service. So we're declaring an instance of the OpenAI service. And now so we can run our asynchronous function, we're going to create a task. Inside that, we're going to say do, obviously because it's a throwing function, so we need a do catch. And in here, we will print the error. So inside that, we'll say let generated image equal to try await OpenAI service dot generate image, and we pass in the formatted prompt. And then we'll say guard let image URL string, image URL string equal to generated image dot data dot first dot URL, and then we'll say let image URL is equal to URL that takes in a string, and that'll take in image URL string else, and if that fails, we're going to print failed to generate image and return. And if it doesn't fail, we're going to make sure that we run this UI update on a main thread. So we'll say await main actor.run, and inside this we're going to say self.image is equal to image URL. You can actually get rid of these and this, and that should pretty much do it. Let's build and make sure that this all works. So build succeeded. If I head back over to my prompt view, this is where what I'm going to do is actually attach this button. Instead of it being a button, I want it to navigate over to the generate view. So instead, I'm going to make a navigation link. So if we just change this to say navigation link, and it's as simple as just sending this over to generator view, and that'll have a view model. And inside that will be the prompt. So prompt text, and the style will be selected style. And now let's refresh the preview. So let's say I want to pick 3D render, and I want to say toy car. Hit generate. It seems like it's not working, and that is because we need this to be wrapped in a navigation view. Well, essentially we're running a navigation link without a navigation view, and that doesn't work. So if we grab navigation view and pop everything inside that. Let's try again now. And let's wait for this to generate our image. Wait for it. Wait for it. There we go. We have a 3D render of a toy car. So if we want to play around with this, we can go back, change it to something that's like, 3D render here. And then toy car. Wait for that. We should have a 3D render of that. And now we have a 3D render of a toy car. If I go back and I want to change this to something like minimalism, pass in the same prompt, head over to the next screen, and we have a minimalist 3D generated. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys build with this. Feel free to share it to me and ask any questions in the comment section below. Don't forget to leave a like. Apparently that makes a difference to the algorithm and helps with the video. And I will catch you in the next video. Peace.